Every person in this room has experienced an uncomfortable situation at some point in their life. Bear with me, but I want to do a thought experiment with you. I'd like for you to visualize a situation or a time where you felt extremely uncomfortable. For some of you, that may be that don't like flying. That might be that feeling that you get in your stomach just before you take off or you're about to land. Or for those of you that are claustrophobic, perhaps it's trying to buy a gift in a busy shopping center the day before Christmas. I'm sure many of you are thinking about that Sunday lunch at the in-laws. And for those of you that don't like public speaking, put yourself in my shoes right here today, because I can guarantee you this is pretty uncomfortable. Now, I don't want you to think about this. I want you to live that experience. And if you're living that experience, you should feel a sense of anxiety just sitting there today. Your palms should be sweaty. Now, what if I were to ask you to pull out your laptop to do some work? Honestly, do you think you would be able to perform under that within that experience? Do you think you would be able to reach your potential? Or more importantly, do you think you would enjoy that experience? The answer is almost certainly no. Research from the Center for Disease Control and Prevention estimates that as much as 20% of the global population are neurodivergent. These include conditions such as autism spectrum disorder, which involves persistent challenges with social interactions and repetitive behaviors, ADHD, which involves inattention, and dyslexia, which is a learning disability in reading. Just think about that. That's 1 in 5 people in this room fall outside of the average. Or put in perhaps a more powerful way, 1 person at your table falls outside of this average. We know so much about these conditions biologically and medically, yet we don't fully appreciate how prevalent they are amongst our society today. Have a think about that. Unfortunately, research also shows that the neurodivergent community are amongst the most underemployed demographic globally. In fact, in some instances, these individuals find it more difficult to find employment compared to those with a criminal record. Yet they possess remarkable skills, talents, and work ethics, not in spite of their neurodivergence, but rather because of their neurodivergence. The fact that they're the most underemployed demographic makes very, very little sense. This is personal to me. I'll never forget our conversation back in Cape Town in 2011. My friend Mike and I were having our regular catch-up. We've been friends for many years. And if there was one thing I knew about Mike, it was that he was a genius and he was destined for greatness. I'll never forget the moment he broke down in front of me crying with his head in his hands. For 18 months, he struggled to find employment because of his autism. The very fact that he couldn't hold a normal conversation or even hold eye contact during interviews played against him again and again, and he'd become discontent. Why, I thought? Why would someone with so much talent and so much to offer be struggling to find employment like this? It didn't make any sense to me. We keep talking about this skills shortage and the fight for talent in Australia, and yet we've got this untapped pool of potential that are struggling to find work. Thankfully, some organizations are seeing the opportunity ahead. Let me share another story with you, perhaps one a little closer to home. The Australian Department of Defence is an organization I'm sure we've all heard of, is tasked with the pretty important responsibility of protecting our country and our freedom. Just like any other organization, the Department of Defense has to perform at an exceptionally high level. In fact, you could argue at a higher level than most private organizations around. A few years ago, the Department of Defense identified a growing threat from cybercrime, and as such, wanted to boost their capabilities in their cybersecurity department. So they went on a search to find remarkable people, although they realized that skills pivotal to that role are more commonly found in individuals with autism. And so they intentionally and strategically hired people with autism to boost their cybercrime department capabilities. According to them, these individuals had a remarkable ability to detect pattern irregularities, a keen eye for detail, a high tolerance for complex mental tasks, and high levels of accuracy and consistency. Let that sink in. The most important organization, arguably in our country, is diversifying its workforce by embracing the neurodiverse community. If you're not doing it, you're falling behind. Back to my friend Mike. Eventually, he did land a job, a good one, at a very reputable organization. That's the good news. The sad news is that it only lasted for 3 months. Why? Well, that's where our real estate comes in. You see, just like our thought experiment earlier, he felt too uncomfortable in the work environment. For those of you that visualize that experience, that could feel that sense of anxiety and uncomfort, that's largely within your control. For many in the neurodivergent community, that's out of their control. You see, we're putting people like Mike into open plan offices, people who struggle with social interactions, and expect them to perform at a high level. And then we're surprised when they don't. And I'll never forget asking him the question, yeah, but they provide focus rooms, don't they? And his response was, I'm limited to 1 hour a day. I want to spend 10 hours in there per day. I cannot stress enough how important it is for us to collaborate and co-design with a neurodivergent community in mind. We cannot assume what makes people comfortable and what makes them happy. We need to ask them. And when they give you a response that perhaps isn't considered normal or what you're expecting, respect that and embrace it and act on it. Just picture the possibilities if you change your hiring practices and your hiring biases and you design office spaces with a neurodivergent community in mind. You'll unearth a talent pool and you'll have an exceptionally engaged, loyal, and productive workforce. Is that not nirvana for every organization out there? And the best part is we have the tools at our disposal to work through this. The Well Equity Rating developed by the International Well Building Institute, developed over 2 years with 600 experts on diversity, equity, and inclusion, is a great testament to how we can go about this. And it's being deployed successfully right here in Australia. I'd like to end off my talk with a quote from one of my favorite thought leaders, Simon Sinek. Great organizations don't hire skilled people and motivate them. They hire motivated people and inspire them. You can use your real estate to inspire the neurodiverse community and help people like myself reach their full potential. Thank you.